Okay, we're recording. Okay, cool. So, hi everyone. My name is Andrea, and if you don't know me, I am currently the president of the Edible Garden Club, and I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by just to hear me ramble and do like a little lecture. I'm currently a senior, and I transferred from Pasadena City College in fall 2019. My major is sociology with a concentration in inequality and diversity, and I'm also minoring in rehab services. My academic studies include studying Latinx immigrant families, school to prison pipeline, environmental racism, and inclusiveness in the education system. But today, I want to focus on a subject that has recently made a little place in my heart, which is gardening. Can you go to the next slide? So before we begin, if you have any questions, keep it to the end of the presentation, and also have your mic muted because I get easily distracted and I will just like shut down and forget everything that I was talking about. So thank you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns that you remember later, make sure to email us or message us on our Instagram, and also let us know on either one of those platforms if you're interested in joining our club. So to begin, I have been a part of this team full of educated gardeners for about a year already, and I have learned so much from them and inherited the love that they had for gardening. And my lecture today is actually a little tribute to them of like what I've learned. So today I will show everyone the process in combining the theoretical perspectives in sociology with the gardening world that I have personally experienced. I hope that everyone is able to follow me through this process. I'll be bringing up theories, sociological terms, and a little bit of history. So here's the outline that we have for today. Me too, I love the PowerPoint thing. And so we're going to be focusing on one sociological theorist. His name is George Simmel. Then be moving on to my gardening perspective. And lastly, we'll be going with my proposal / theory. So next slide. So let's begin with a German sociologist. His name is George Simmel. His period of time was between 1858 to 1918. I also put a little lemur there because he reminds me of a lemur. He kind of looks like a lemur. His focuses include the nature of association, culture, social interactions, and most notably, the city life. So though he is not up there with the big boys of like sociology, like Weber and Durkheim, his piece titled "The Metropolis and Mental Life" is well liked by contemporary sociologists, so not as much as classical, but sociologists now, applying it to everyday life now. So that includes people like me and my fellow classmates. We do like Simmel a lot, so yeah. So his Metropolis and Mental Life is going to be a piece that I'll be referring to today. So what exactly is this piece? Well, before we move any further, we must be aware of the period of time this was written in and what was going on. So the Metropolis and Mental Life was published in 1903. And it was actually a series of lectures that Simmel gave at an exhibition. And the book itself is just a compilation of all these lectures that he did. So in 1870, modern Germany was being created, and many industries were formed, businesses were being created, and it was in time to embrace the means of technology. And so what does that mean for everyone else? It means jobs. But what exactly was everyone doing? What was their job before all this big industry boom started? Well, they were working in the fields, working under the hot sun, farming, making do with nature, with a little bit of technology here and there. And everyone else was much closer to each other. These were small rural towns. And I don't mean as like in a close way as like, oh, we're just all like one big happy family and everyone gets along. I mean as in like, I don't know, like Judy down the street knows that your cousin because your cousin works at a market and they both talk about their families and somehow she knows who you are, like that kind of thing. And so the whole main deal was you knew everyone and everyone knew you. Everyone was just working and trying to get by. And there was some sort of like hierarchy, but at the end of the day, everyone was just trying to survive. And everyone was pretty much at the same level. No room for growth, and the profit that they made was just like what they made and distributed among different means in order to survive. So when these factories and such started to need people to work for them, everybody left these rural towns and traveled to the city where everything was going to be developed. And this was a chance for them to make things easier. This was a chance where you could move up in your life instead of living in the rural town. And thus, this is how the city was created. So different people from different towns ended up in this one place um, to work in many different specializations, many different types of factories, and be able to move up the economic ladder. So Simmel wanted to go more in depth about this major transition that has happened. So this wasn't like something small, this was huge. And he wanted to see the psychological effects of this. So he compared your everyday rural life individual to a city dweller. So let's start with the impressions of the rural town setting. These impressions were developed gradually due to the basis of habit. Everyone was around each other, everyone was closer to each other. So you were bound to see the same person twice, 3 times, 4 times, and you would get some sort of impression of them. So, and they would have the same impression of you. And so over time, you could actually build like conversation, rapport, and a relationship with this person. And these impressions were more based on, might sound cheesy, but it was based more on the heart rather than the mind. So when we look at the city dweller, the contact that you make with someone in the city is fleeting. There you are 1 second next to them, and then boom, they're gone. They're already down the street. Everyone's moving, everything is quick. And the chances of you making a big impression on someone are very, very low. And speaking of this, I'm only gonna be covering like some of Simmel's like talks in the city life, but he actually covers a bunch of other things such as fashion, art. He covers money itself. And so when he says that how we make small impressions on people in the city life, this is how we like developed our own sense of fashion, and how like our fashion could go into something more flashy in order to leave a bigger impression on someone in that split second when they see you. But yeah, that's just a little tangent. So in this case, as a city person, we are accustomed to single glances, just looking at someone for 1 second, and like, God forbid you make eye contact, because then you have to do that little like, like a little head thing, or you just look at them and just look away. And this is when we begin to develop a sort of shield around us, a defense. We don't want anyone to throw us off. We react with our head rather than our heart. But the positives is the city, there are more jobs, more people, and more room to grow, kind of. Simmel says that with these brief interactions and the lack of lasting impressions, we crave to find out where we belong in this fast machine that we call the city. We search until we find our spot of where we fit. But where we fit could sometimes be a place that he calls a cog in the wheels that keep the city running. I'm referring to institutions that we really do not trust that much anymore. I'm referring to even government that sometimes we don't trust anymore, with these promises here and there, and sometimes we don't trust them. Or sometimes we go into businesses that we know sometimes they might be at the expense of someone else, but we're making capital, we're making our own profit. We're not really thinking about other people because capital means a lot more to us. So they make profit at the end of the day. These big businesses, they make profit off of you and off of your experience and off of your work. And maybe at the end of the day, well, what about you? How do you feel? You are a cog in the system, but the thing is, how do you feel, and how do you think everyone else around you feels? We as humans cannot thrive without making meaningful relationships with each other. In order for us to figure out who we are as individuals, Simmel says we must interact with other people. Yes, the city gives you more opportunities to make money, create your platform, give you all these positions where you could fit in, but we must let our guards down and be vulnerable and be aware of one another. And I'm not saying just to be friends, but how to empathize with one another and realize the person who you think could be your competition is just trying to survive just like you. The competition sense in the city is one of the main things that Simmel like talks about, which is we go into the city, we try to make money, and then we look at people and we're like, you're my enemy. I'm trying to make more money than you, more money than every single one of you. And so Symbol says that that prevents us from making real meaningful interactions. So next slide. So after all that tangent, what the hell does this have to do with gardening? Well, I'm a part of a club, if you don't know, Edible Garden Club, repping it in my little background. And we advocate for a lot of things here. We advocate for better environment, composting. 2 weeks ago, we were educating people about dirt and much, much more. But one of our main projects behind the scenes in the Edible Garden was to open up a garden space at Cal State LA. And food insecurity is one of the main unspoken problems that occur at colleges all around the US. And we wanted a place where students could pick up foods, different fruits and vegetables at no cost whatsoever. And we do realize that there's a food pantry, but having thousands of students, they can't only just rely on one food pantry. As you could see with the signups for food pantry, they said we can only take 200 students and that's it. But must be more than 200 students who could be able to get these opportunities to get food. And the college can only do so much. So we're just trying to, yeah, and also, yeah, no fresh fruits or vegetables. Yeah, there you go. That you want something more organic. You want to know where it's coming from. It gives students a better sense of comfort to know that, oh, that fruit or that vegetable is being grown right there at the college. And it's being taken care of by students who care about our well-being and the well-being of the garden a lot. So before all of this, in our executive team in the club, we were all just strangers, different majors, most likely would never cross paths with each other. But we all had a mutual care for the environment and food accessibility for students. And all of us in college, we're just trying to get that degree, get out to the world, and make some money. And community college, especially in my experience, and now in a 4-year college, everything is moving fast. College is like your own little city. Everything is just going quick, and there's no time to interact unless you take a minute to slow down and realize what is there for you, what opportunities lie in front of you, of what college could actually offer for you. And so quickly, we began to rely on each other for updates about the garden, who was going to work at the garden, who was bringing what to the garden, and who was involved. And this opened up our world to get to know professors involved in the grant that had to do with our garden. Staff and housing, the staff that takes care of housing at Cal State LA, and learning exactly how bureaucratic the college system is, but also knowing who to talk to when you want to get something done, and learning how to accommodate needs and expectations of people, but also learning how to put our foot down when we realize something isn't right. So next slide. So I dumped all this information on you, and now here's my proposal slash kind of theory, which is the economic investment and environmental growth will improve community wellness to those who are unrepresented. Well, how? Opening up community gardens in different low-income neighborhoods. This will create jobs and have more people interact with each other through the gardening process. Having that closeness between you, nature, just like how people in the rural life, as Symbol described, how they were living by tending to the garden, growing your own food, interacting with your community, you could all grow like a mutual understanding and care for your community, and also putting a face to your neighbor or putting a face to someone down the street. And not only that, but creating meaningful bonds and building up social capital. Social capital is something that is very, very valued in high income classes. This means being born into a very rich family. That means that you know someone who could get you somewhere, someone could hire you in a high level job, even with no experience. As we've seen in the USC and different college scandals, the reason why these people got into these colleges through these scams is because they knew someone. They knew someone who could mess with the papers. They knew someone who could mess with the scores. They knew someone. So that's social capital. And when we think of capital, we think of money, but as I said, social capital is networking. You get to know the people around you and build a relationship with them by working and living near them, as in this case, working on the gardens in your community. And having a mutual goal for a well-functioning society. And we want this in order to prevent alienation. We want to create a class consciousness. And this was a term coined by Karl Marx, which when he explained class consciousness, the bourgeoisie, as he said, the higher people up there, they didn't want the lower class to talk to each other and to interact with each other, to realize that they're being used and that they're being mistreated. They didn't want them to create a sort of mutual consciousness like, hey, we're not being treated right. And so for low income neighborhoods to develop this, it would be easier to have a set plan of what does our city need? What do we need to thrive? What problems are going on over here, instead of just constant bickering and arguing that I always see. I don't know if anyone has this, the Nextdoor app for their neighborhood. It's constant arguing about different things going on in the neighborhood. And there's not a set idea. When you want to develop a plan to fix a problem, you need everyone to be on the same page, and that's not how it is. And so putting a face and impression on the people that work beside you, especially in these gardens, could do so much. This is how rural communities kept it close, and this is how it prevented them from alienating one another. And alienating one another, I mean being discriminatory to one another, getting to know the person instead of judging them by the way they look, the color of their skin, sexuality, class, all this type of stuff. You need to get to know and empathize with the other person. So when it comes to the economy as well, you can have people working in these gardens. Most of the time, I think it's like volunteer based, but actually hiring people who are educated and know what to do, working in these gardens and educating the people around them. One of the people on our grant, which is Dr. Choi Chatterjee, she made such a good point when she says that people don't know how to cook. And that's why we have such a big problem when it comes to like the lack of food in our system and people going hungry, is because people don't know what to do with the little that they are given. And so having people in these gardens to educate people on what to do with these fruits or vegetables could create better bonds. It could help you save money, and it could help like a lot of things going on in your life. Another thing that could be implemented is tax deductions for trees that you're upkeeping in your home, and advocating for more trees to be planted in low-income neighborhoods. I don't know if anyone has noticed the amount of trees in high-income neighborhoods. There's a lot of trees, a lot of shade, and it's very cool over there. It might feel good to go outside and walk in the summer under those trees because it's not that hot. But when you go into low income neighborhoods, you could only see just like a tree like here or there, and that's it. So getting to know about what problems and what things are going on in your neighborhood to help upkeep it, to show the city, hey, we have these concerns and we care. Another thing is co-op housing. Low rent at the exchange of taking care of the garden that's located on the premises. There's only a few apartment slash like properties that do that in LA, but I feel like we should expand that a lot more. And also because rent is such a problem, such a huge problem in LA and probably all over the world. So next slide. So in conclusion, my overall thoughts and concerns are just for the community and for the wellness that I discussed, and the teachings of Simmel of how we could create community wellness. At the end of the day, when you want something to get done, you have to be on the same page. But it's hard to do that when everything is moving so fast, and when we have these defenses about one another. We have these pre-made thoughts about one another, and it's hard not to be judgmental because we developed ourselves to protect ourselves. And of course, it's not such a bad thing to be defensive, because having a defense is a mechanism to survive. But when I mean to let your guard down and be vulnerable, I mean it as your community and seeing other people suffering, not to just look at them and be like, well, that's never going to be me one day, or that's never going to happen to me. It could happen to you. And also, it is affecting you whether you know it or not. And putting a face to the people that are around you can help you build a better perspective of your world so much. We rely on people. Even if we think that we are independent and self sufficient, that's not true. We rely on so many people around us. We just don't know them. We, one example I was thinking of was on Mondays, the trash person comes and they come pick up our trash. So on Sundays, me or my mom or my dad, we move the trash cans like to like the edge of the curb so they could pick it up. We already rely on that person that we haven't seen to pick up our trash, and we put it in a place where it's easily accessible for them to pick up. And we rely on so many other things in our world that we just don't take into consideration. And so gardening is the same too. Rely on one another to help grow this like new life that could help feed so many people. We rely on people to give us the tools to do so. We rely, if we want to get tools, we rely on the people at the hardware store to be there and to help us pick out what is the best option for us. We rely on one another when it comes to education, the best soil to pick, the best tools to use, the best what's a good time to plant this? Is it in season? All this kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys took a little something from my presentation today, and thank you so much for coming.